Ladies and gentlemen, this is TVP World. You're watching another edition of Break the Fake, where we debunk fake news and combat false narratives. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and let's get rolling. Now let's talk about Russia, the beacon of rationality and good governance. Recently, Beijing decided to skip the peace summit on Ukraine, reportedly at Putin's request, because when you're Vladimir Putin, you don't just crash a party, you tell others not to show up. Jake Sullivan, the U.S. National Security Advisor, said that China refused to attend because Putin asked them to do so. Officially, meanwhile, Beijing says that they declined because they wanted a conference that included a Russian delegation. You know, the folks who started this whole mess? At the summit, Western leaders announced new measures against entities in China and other third countries that supports Russia's war machine. They also took the opportunity to slam China's disruptive market practices and express concern over human rights abuses in Xinjiang and Tibet. Quite a full agenda. In response, Putin, never one to miss a bit of drama, claimed that the West is trying to find legal justification to steal Russian assets. He said, quote, "Despite all the tricks, theft is still theft and will not go unpunished." And that's coming from the man who probably thinks Grand Theft Auto is an instructional video. These assets, by the way, are the frozen funds of Russia's central bank held in European banks since the invasion of Ukraine. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen mentioned that G7 finance ministers are figuring out how to use the interest generated by these frozen assets to help Ukraine. Confiscating these assets outright raises international legal concerns, so the compromise is to hand over just the interest. Meanwhile, Western leaders can't agree on whether Ukraine should use Western weapons to strike within Russia. French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, and US President Joe Biden all have different takes. Biden's stance: it's okay to hit targets close to the Eastern Front. Thanks, Joe, for clarifying the exact coordinates of close enough. On the other side of the spectrum, Deputy Speaker of the Polish Senate, Michał Kamiński, didn't mince words. The Western world is repeating the same mistakes concerning Russia, but expects different results, and added that if you give them a hand, they'll eat you. It's in their nature.
And I'm sorry to say, now I can tell it, we are idiots as Western world, because we are repeating the same mistakes towards Russia and expecting different results. It will not happen. If you are giving them the hand, they will eat you. They will eat you. It's their nature.
As the Western world debates how to support Ukraine without upsetting Russia, Kremlin propagandists like Solovyov are calling for the total destruction of Kyiv. He suggested blowing up the Kyiv dam to flood the city, potentially causing a radiation leak. This is Putin's idea of peace, like inviting someone to dinner and suggesting that they bring their own poison. So when Putin offers his peace plan, his mouthpieces are plotting disaster movie. If you ever doubted that the Kremlin's definition of peace is twisted, just remember, they see themselves as the hero in their own apocalyptic tale.
Но я не понимаю, почему до сих пор киевская дамба стоит. Я реально этого не понимаю. Я считаю, что мы должны перейти к позиции жесточайшего наказания. Слушайте, они нам утюжат Белгород, мы пытаемся сохранить Киев. Они не поймут нашего благородства. Сейчас там что, третий день, второй день, что-то горит в Киеве. Но они же все равно все считают, что они сейчас нас победят. Вот там Буданов, хитрый пирожок, что-то рассуждает о том, что будет с Крымским мостом. А если снести нахрен плотину, то надо будет ему рассуждать, что будет с Киевом.
Now we need to talk about the latest episode in the endless series called Russia's Delusional Fantasies. Yes, Russia and Belarus have been working overtime to paint Poland as the new evil villain in the propaganda saga. It's almost impressive how creative they twist reality to fit their narrative. Remember how Russia started their smear campaign against Ukraine back in 2013? They roll out the classics: Nazis, fascists, a state supporting terrorism, and a nation destabilizing the region. Well, now they're recycling that script for Poland, because why come up with new lies when the old one works just fine? Recently, we've seen a string of events that the Kremlin's propaganda machine has latched onto like a hungry dog on a bone. There's an escalation of the crisis at the Polish-Belarusian border, the tragic killing of a Polish soldier by a migrant, and the explosion at the Mescal arms factory, which resulted in the death of a worker. All these incidents have been swiftly co-opted by Russian propagandists to fuel their narrative of Poland as a dangerous, destabilizing force. Now, let's break this down. Both Russia and Belarus love to play the besieged fortress card to their domestic audiences. It's a classic move. Portray themselves as the noble defenders against the big bad West, with Poland as their new frontline villain. The goal? To deflect their own failures and rally their people around a common enemy. Meanwhile, in Poland, they're trying to instill a sense of servility. The strategy is simple. Use psychological pressure and intimidation to make Poles anxious, then swoop in with a solution that conveniently involves rejecting Western allies like NATO and cozying up to Russia. It's like a bad infomercial. Are you tired of being bullied by the West? Try our new submission to Russia plan, now with 100% more oppression. This is a long-term game plan for Russia. They're not just looking to destabilize Poland in the short term, they want to weaken Poland's resolve and independence over time. It's a psychological war of attrition, and they're betting that with enough pressure, Poland will crack and come running to Russia for protection. But here's the thing, Poland ain't buying it. They've seen this playbook before, and they know how the story ends. And while Russia might be able to fool some of its people with this nonsense, the rest of the world sees it for what it is, a desperate attempt by a fading power to cling to relevance by creating enemies where none exist. And what about Russia's recent trip to Cuba? On Friday, we told you all about Moscow sending a little fleet of aging vessels to a visit to a Caribbean ally. Now, Russian propaganda is trying to spin the Sunset Cruise as a threat, involving an attack on the United States base in Guantanamo and a possible nuclear raid.
Хорошая военная инфраструктура, которая вполне пригодится Российской Федерации для того, чтобы разместить там, если не базу, то, по крайней мере, пункт материального обеспечения.
А еще там пытают людей, и этих людей надо спасти. Ну, то есть
не
масса причин. Пожалуйста.
Вы знаете, на мой взгляд, есть только один адекватный, быстрый, эффективный способ ответа на масштабирование ударов по территории Российской Федерации американским дальнобойным оружием. Коль скоро Байден и Салливан такую отмашку дали,
Да.
а ВСУ будет это реализовывать. Это уничтожение всей украинской электрогенерации. Теперь, что касается наших кораблей, которые пришли на Кубу или в виде подводных лодок, это официально объявлено, что Казань — единственная лодка, которая в составе отряда боевых кораблей, а Северный флот туда пришла. На самом деле, как можно предположить, Казань там не одна, а как минимум еще несколько российских многоцелевых атомных подводных лодок в разных частях Атлантического океана отрабатывает задачи. Они, в общем-то, понятны. Противодействие американским авианосным ударным группировкам. Ну и, конечно же, если наносится удар, как было объявлено, там на несколько сот километров по американской АУК, это означает, что будет наноситься удар с использованием, конечно, спецбоеприпасов для максимально эффективного, быстрого и надежного поражения.
Спецбоеприпасы — это ядерное оружие.
Да, совершенно верно, ядерное.
So, in the grand tradition of Russian propaganda, this latest effort is both sad and laughable. But let's not forget, it's also dangerous, because when a regime is willing to go to such a length to fabricate threats and manipulate perception, it shows just how far they'll go to maintain control. And that, my friend, is no laughing matter. And with that, we conclude this edition of Break the Fake. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.